Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. First order of business is a roll call.
Chair Wolf.
Here.
Vice Chair List.
Here.
Member Lowry.
Here.
Member Friend. Member Roby.
Okay, first item on the calendar is the consent calendar, which includes the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting and the minutes from the last meeting. Are there any corrections or removals?
Correction, we should probably do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, my bad. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Here's the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's just so nice to start a meeting and you've messed it up in the first 30 seconds. So, thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to the consent calendar, which includes the adoption of the agenda and the minutes from the last meeting. Any corrections to the minutes or changes to tonight's agenda? Okay, looks like it passes by consent. So we didn't pull any items. This is the, now we're to item 3, items of interest to the public. The public comment section regarding items that are not on tonight's agenda. And if some of you in the audience probably recall, we used quite a bit of time at the last meeting discussing how we're going to kind of make this, the public comment part of the meetings a little less confusing and a little more in accord, actually a lot more in accordance with the Brown Act, and that we're only now, just to remind everybody, in regards to stating your name when you come up for the public comment section, it's completely voluntary. So just having said that, this is the moment when we would invite you to come talk to us about anything not on tonight's agenda, and your comments are and will be limited to 3 minutes. So are there any takers? All right, I won't try to talk you into it. Okay. Now we're on to the section regarding written communications to the commission from staff.
Staff has 2 additional letters of or emails of correspondence to the commission. They both relate to items on the agenda tonight. An email was submitted and received today. It's from Sue Taylor. It's regarding items 5.1 on tonight's agenda. The second is also an email we received yesterday. So again, once it was outside the packet delivery for tonight's meeting. And this email is from Greg Machado. It's 1 page. Thank you. For item 5.2.
And these items were made available to the public tonight?
They are. I have they may view them as we talk about them, yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the public hearing portion of the meeting, and we'll begin with item 5.1, 618 Main Street conditional use permit and site plan review and a variance request. I'll read this directly because it's verbatim, because this item has been here several times. Just so everybody knows exactly where we're at in the process here. This was a continued public hearing from the November 17, 2015 regular meeting to consider potential amendments by the Commission to the Planning Commission's November 3rd, 2015 conceptual approval of the parking lot project. The Commission is also to further consider, amend as necessary, and adopt findings and conditions of approval for 618 Main Street, the 618 Main Street project. So that's the agenda item before us tonight. We're reviewing what we conceptually approved at the last meeting. And I guess I would begin with any additional staff report, please.
Well, to add what you just described as an overview of where we are, it is staff's understanding that this was continued to allow a member who is not present at the moment to provide you with some additional considerations regarding this request tonight. In the absence of that member not being here, the other aspect of this agenda item is to consider staff's draft conditions of approval and findings of fact in relationship to the conceptual approval back in November. If it's the discretion of the commission, I can go over those findings and conditions of approval if you wish.
Just to make sure that the chair and the commission are clear, our options here tonight are to take action based on the conceptual approval we made and conditions of approval from the last meeting that are now before us in a much cleaner, more understandable format. Or we could possibly continue this item because the owner's not here. Is that pretty much it? I thought you just said the applicant wasn't in the room.
No, it was member Friend who, it was his request
okay.
to continue this item to tonight's meeting because 2 weeks ago the applicant was not in the audience.
But the applicant is here tonight?
Yes.
Good. That's good. All right. So, any questions of Mr. Friend? No. Thank you. We just opened item 5.1. Any other questions of staff?
I would like to add something. You may remember, and it's mentioned in the agenda item description, that at the last meeting, the public hearing was reopened and then continued to tonight. So technically what's on the floor right now is to reopen the public hearing or continue with the second part of this item agenda, which is dispatching with the conditions of approval and findings of fact.
But isn't it technically the hearing's already open? We just left it open last time.
Right, so to close it, you would formally have to close it.
Yeah, that would take formal action. So that we all understand, and I understand, the item is still open. We made conceptual conditions of approval at the last meeting, but all of those are still on the table. We're not bound by those, and things can be changed.
Technically, not at the last meeting. The last meeting, we simply continued the meeting before we provided conceptualization and staff.
But the water we find ourselves swimming in tonight is the item is open.
Yes.
And everything's on the table.
I would recommend that I'm sure there are people that are here to speak. I would recommend that we conduct a public hearing, hear whatever additional testimony. I presume you haven't heard anything from the applicant. And then anyone else who wishes to speak, and then we can proceed from there.
Sure.
That'd be my suggestion to the chair.
I certainly agree. So at this point, we'll go. Do you want something you want to say first? Oh yeah, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing and request that we first hear from the applicant.
Hi, Sue Taylor. I was asked to speak for the applicant, and I submitted this not too many hours ago. Sorry, Andrew, but I need to know if the Planning Commission got a copy. Did all four of you get a copy of what we submitted? Okay, cool. So basically, we agree with the findings of fact. There's a note on here about standing on this issue in the first place, but the Howe family would really like to make some improvements on the property. So given that, we would approve the findings, and then we added a few options so that if they would like to do something a little bit more decorative than just a curb, they could do a decorative wall or planter box that would be approved, a final approval with the administrative review. And so you can see, I don't know if you got yours in color, but basically the things we added are just in red right here. So if you had time to read that, that's what we added, and we were just hoping to do that and be, then we're okay with these conditions. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right.
Anyone else?
Good evening, Steve Calfee. I've only been around in the business for about 34 years. In my 34 years of public service, formerly as community development director, I do not believe I've ever seen a more incomplete application work its way through the planning counter and up to the planning commission level. One must really be creative to try to cherry pick what the facts are in the application. For example, let's talk about the variance. You have to be creative into trying to understand what the variance is about. Is it for landscaping? Is it for lighting? Is it for drainage or pavement or parking and backout requirements? Or what is it for? Because the fact is, you don't have enough information in the application that's before you to decipher exactly what it is for. The public does not have the information to decipher what the circumstances are to justify the variance. There's no landscaping plan, drainage plan, lighting plan, so forth, that everybody else is asked to submit and be judged by on its own merits before the Planning Commission. You don't have any of that information. In fact, what you have is a site plan that's akin to have been drawn by, I don't know, a youngster. I do have a copy of a file, of a letter in the file from Mr. Painter to the applicant that does not have my yellow notations on it, but I can tell you that the letter is public record, and it essentially identifies 40 deficiencies in the application. 40. Yet the application is still before you. So talking about the variance and the use permit, of course you know you must find that the application has to be consistent with the various components and elements of the general plan. I have a copy of it. I know it inside and out, probably better than anybody in this room, except for maybe Mr. Painter, because Andrew has a tendency to memorize matters. But I cannot find one single goal or policy that this application is consistent with. This application is, take my word for it, I'll do it. But going back to the justification for the variance, there is none. Oh, am I on a time frame? Okay. The application does nothing to forward the aesthetic of the community. If it did, I would not be standing here right now. I cannot think of one thing that this request does to forward the aesthetic of the community other than in a negative direction that it's going. And you know, you've got a general plan that sets forth the goals and policies of the community aesthetic, and if any of you can tell me exactly what this accomplishes, then I will applaud you. I won't take up any more of your time because I'm limited in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. This is Mr. Painter's original copy for the record, and multiple copies. Wouldn't you know it, last time I had multiple copies of 3 photographs. Now I couldn't find them, so those are the originals. A, B, and C. A is a photograph of the Howe property. Photograph B is a photograph of another lot just across the street, less than 100 feet from where we are now. And the third one is on Reservoir Street, right behind the 400 block of Main Street on Reservoir, and it has an unpaved parking lot. I'm familiar with it because our family owns it. Now, you look at number one, all three were taken the first rainstorm after we last met on this matter. You can see that there is rain on Exhibit A that goes over the sidewalk for the Howe property. You can visibly see that there's much more water that goes over the other side.
Mr. Smith, can I ask you a question? The lot you say across the street, is that the Chamber of Commerce parking lot you're talking about?
I believe it is. It's just kind of catty
To
corner.
the east, to the west of the Chamber building?
I think it's
Yeah,
possibly
between
opposite
those
the
two.
bagel place.
Okay, just wanted to know where you were talking about.
And the photograph hopefully will look familiar. So you can visibly see that they're there. Now, this is a case of selective prosecution. Political payback. How do you know? Because you look at the transcript. October 28th of last year, the last city council meeting before an election, Mr. Calfee, a contract employee, gets up at this lectern and tells the city council about two persons who had engaged in illegal conduct. He didn't use them by name, he used like the Howe Family Trust, the Smith Family Trust. Now you imagine that out of all the people, all the properties in Placerville, he mentions two persons who just happen to be subject of election matters. One is Wilbur Howe, who was one of the three signatories that got the initiative for Measure K on the ballot, a very controversial measure, something the city didn't like, somebody that everybody but Trish Wilkins opposed. And then you have, the next matter was the Smith family property, and described something on a pole sign that he said was illegal. At least that was the notice he first gave us 6 years ago. And then when we were last before you and I suggested selective matters and why don't they go after the Carroll property. So when I talked to staff, remember I said that when I talked to them, they said, oh, no, that's not an abandoned property. It's just like your case. Your case is not abandoned because it was between, the pole sign was between tenants. So it's not an abandoned sign. Well, that's fine. I'm glad you accept my argument, but that's 6 years later. And it cost us a tremendous amount of money. We started to make repairs consistent with what described there. I wish I had. If you gave me an hour for voir dire, trust me, on that first sentence out of his mouth on his qualifications, I'd be glad to explore that at great length. But when you look at this transcript, it's pretty hard to believe that that's just not political payback. Of all the properties that you could go after, you're going after somebody who was involved there. And it's not the kind of letter, and it's not voluntary compliance is nonsense as it was described in that transcript. It's extortion. Make an offer you can't refuse. The letter that he got was the same kind that we got, which is your property is going to be possessed. We can take possession of your property. We can put liens on it. But you don't, in the same office, when it comes to housing code violations, they handle it completely different. They don't say you're violating the law. I've gotten 3 of those letters. Only one of them was a mistake, and the other said, it's been brought to our attention. Please bring it, address it in 10 days. So I guess you get the idea. Those are the records. I swear that the 3 photographs accurately represent what I described, and you have the original copy of the court certified transcript. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You better not. Anyone else?
Good evening, members of the commission and Chairman Wolf. I'm Marion Washburn, and I live on Azalea Lane in Placerville. And you probably wonder, why did I come here tonight to speak to this issue? There's a little history that would explain that. And the history is that, well, as you might know, I was on the city council for 3 terms. Before that, I was on the planning commission for 2 terms. And before that, I was on the general plan writing committee. And before that, I was on a historical advisory committee. But I say that because I participated in a great deal of general plan writing. I was on the general plan committee and a number of the subcommittees that wrote the language that you see in some of the verbiage that you're getting. So I've always honored that because I saw it was a product of a number of years of public participation from lots and lots and lots of our citizens. There was residents, there were business people that participated in discussions for the general plan, which set a lot of the standards for our town. And then subsequently, more controversially perhaps, was the revitalization effort while I was on the city council. And that set the standards for the Main Street Historic Corridor. And most of those you see in the ordinance language before you. And I bring this up because having been on the Planning Commission, I know as you read this stuff, it seems dry. It kind of seems like, at least it seemed like to me, that quite often some bureaucrat someplace made this stuff up after they got their degree in planning, and maybe it was to bedevil the poor hapless private property owner or business person that came forward. But in this case, I can sincerely tell you that almost all of this language was a product of public participation on residents of this city and business owners. Not that it wasn't controversial, because it was, but these standards have been brought forth and voted on by your citizens and people who cared enough to show up to multiple public hearings. So what I see in this is, well, and I could read it to you, but you've got it as well, waiving landscape standards, waiving lighting standards, waiving miscellaneous standards. That, I would say, is not honoring that public participation that people hold dearly. Let me give you, if I may, one little nugget of the philosophy that came forward in the revitalization effort. And that was that as you go down the Main Street Historic Corridor, there's nothing more off-putting than parked cars in lots. That it was understood after a lot of education that what makes a downtown corridor interesting, fascinating, vital is that there's buildings, buildings, buildings. And if you have gaps of parking lots that you really don't have any control of, what you want to do is put barriers that are friendly. And the Mills parking lot comes to mind. They've got landscaping, they've got some lighting, they've got some decorative features that kind of conceals the parked car vista from the passerby, the pedestrian, and the motorist. And that was part of the standard that were in those guidelines in the design standards and in the general plan. So I am here to stand up for our city standards. Please apply them. I think to do otherwise is really to fly in the face of the citizens who've cared enough to participate and would hope to have their voices heard as time goes by. To do otherwise is to fly in the face of their trust. So I'm hoping that you do apply the standards in the city ordinances. Don't waive them, please apply them. I know you've got good judgment and aesthetic sense.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Chair Wolf and members of the Commission. Kathy Lishman. I too worked on the general plan, and that's one of the reasons that I feel so strongly about this. This is not about personalities, and it's not about elections, and it's not about political payback. This is about what is good for the city. And this is not about public parking lots versus private parking lots. They all have the same standards. And this is not about property rights. It's about the standards that the city has. This site is on a parking lot on Main Street in a downtown commercial core. It's not out in the country somewhere. Mr. Howe has had a benefit for many years by not making the improvements the code requires. And had he put the improvements in originally, I'm sure they would have cost a lot less. The application that's submitted was substandard, and so staff made a recommendation to you that was consistent with city parking and loading requirements, consistent with the drainage and surfacing requirements, consistent with the design requirement criteria, consistent with the general site design guidelines. Everything that staff recommended to you is consistent with the standards we have. The parking lot should be paved. Others in that block have paved theirs, so you know it can be done regardless of what the ground is like underneath it. There was an example in the original recommendation from staff about a raised planter at 18 Main Street. Also, the Ivy House lot is a raised planter, so if the ground is not good for growing, there can be landscaping, and there should be lighting, and there should be parking lot standards. As a planning commissioner, you have the responsibility to the community to uphold and implement the general plan and the zoning code. To go in the direction that you have been proposing would grant a special privilege to the property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commission. Michael Drobish. Condition 4, I think, is the most recent one, mentioning fluted bowler pipes and chain link. And I was just wondering, I'm sure you meant like single run linked chain. We wouldn't want to see chain link between those posts. I think that the previous discussion about creating a solid short barrier to trap water on site to keep it from flowing into the creek, that can work. So it'd be nice to see that allowed. The sign, I think he really needs to have at least a small sign declaring that it's a private, at least private property. So he should be allowed to have at least a small sign. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Phil McCarthy, Wilbur Howe's brother-in-law and Marilyn McCarthy's husband. And I'm connected with this. Well, I don't even have to explain how I'm connected. I couldn't not be connected. They talk about it constantly. The testimony we've heard here today, or the arguments we've heard today, are really just asking you to please think about all that you've heard before in making the decisions, although not final, that you've made before. And I've heard nothing new yet that you haven't already considered in coming to the point where we were when we started the meeting.
I have a question. Sorry,
Yes,
and
sir.
I should have asked when,
Yes,
when
sir.
Sue was up. I drove by the lot in the wee hours of the morning last night. It was between 12 and 12:30, I think. And there were 4 or 5 cars there, and I'm presuming those cars are not for the staff of the business. Is that the type of parking that you're trying to prevent? Who was there? Our delivery trucks. No, these were vehicles. There's a small. Those are all belong to CNH. Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
All right.
Since you brought it up, there is a point in the material provided by Ms. Taylor having to do with the sign, which we would prefer be retained in some form, some acceptable form, just to remind the public that they have a duty to stay off the property, which is our goal entirely.
All right. Thank you. There's 3 people who haven't spoken. Are you guys in line? All right. Seeing no one else, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for discussion and action.
From the very beginning, I have been bothered by this whole application process that we had no plans. We had an application that, to me, was a piece of paper with Band-Aids on it. We have a process for signs in this city. yet we have heard you can't have that sign, you need something else. Let's follow the process. I'm in favor of turning this back on a no vote and having the applicant resubmit with plans so that we have something to work from.
I lean John's way, probably more as a result of what has been requested here diverges so widely from the published general plan, as we heard earlier, arrived at a public process. We may not want to comply with some of these things, but I go back to what a former council person said about why are we spending so much money on the waste treatment plant. Well, because it's the law. And to my understanding, these requirements that have been agreed to for harmonious and attractive development in the city of Placerville have the force of law. That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, commissioners, and members of the public, just a couple of comments, if I may. I think it's absolutely without question that this body, and certainly this commissioner, I'll speak for myself, want to apply and feel it our obligation to apply and enforce the general plan and the guidelines that support it, in making our community, and particularly our specific corridors, an attractive and functioning and vital area for the city. Okay, and one of the fundamental questions that is before us with regard to this application is there a basis to grant an exception to what the community has said they want for their community through the efforts that have been described here previously? In other words, is there a basis for providing a variance? I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of what we're coming down to. Before I get into some of the specific, I do want to talk about this advisement as to the adequacy of the plan, because we heard from Mr. Calfee, who has significant experience, that this plan was woefully deficient and really should never have come to the commission. And I really have to defer to staff. As you know, I know this staff; it's a correct staff. They've always been exceptional, and I'm struggling a little bit with the assertion that this staff would in fact have submitted something to us that was just in fact so woefully deficient. And frankly, I don't find it woefully deficient if you come to the conclusion that this is in fact a different piece of property. I have to say without question that I fundamentally disagree with the position that this is not about private property rights. Respectfully disagree. And I also respectfully disagree that this is not about a private use parking lot versus a public parking lot. Every single example, from the photographs to every example that has been cited, have been parking lots that are for the use by the public. They require lighting. They require paving. They require all of the standards that should be applied, and those are reasonable standards of application to parking lots. But that is not what we have here. The issues can be distilled down, from my perspective, into the issue of erosion and water quality, which the city has a compelling interest to control without question. And in one of the photographs we saw, we have the water running across the sidewalk and into the storm drain, and therefore to Hangtown Creek. We saw two other examples of similar lots. Okay, that has to be controlled. One of the requirements in the proposal was to mitigate exactly that. The other issue deals with the parking lot standards, and as I've said, I am of the opinion that because of the use of this lot, which is not for the public, that does rise to the level of granting a variance. In our application tonight, we have a save the date flyer. And there's a great photograph of this particular tiny sliver of property that in fact we're talking about. And I mean, there is barely enough room to have an entrance and exit on this piece of property, much less have all of the lighting and other standards that we're looking for. I mean, this picture for me, frankly, really puts it in perspective. The other issue is the aesthetics. I could not agree more that we need to have something that is aesthetically pleasing. One of the reasons that this item was continued this evening at my request, well, there were two reasons. One, the applicant could not be here when we were going to consider it last month. The other reason was that I had a conversation with the applicant just after the meeting had concluded and they were leaving, and they mentioned to me that they would really rather have much preferred to have put in a planter and landscaping as opposed to the fluted bollards with the chain link. Okay. Subsequently, I talked with the applicant, and they said, you know, the other thing about the sign, in order to be legally defensible to call it a private lot, and no one is suggesting that we have to make this a public parking lot. No one is challenging that they have the right to keep it a private lot. But in order to do that, they do have to have a sign of some sort that says this is private property. Okay? And so I was going to propose two modifications to the conditions. Conditions 4 and 5, okay, 5 being the one that required the sign to be removed. I'm still going to require that particular sign to be removed, but it can be replaced with a much smaller sign which will also not be oriented to Main Street, but will be oriented to the back of C&H's building. And so anyone that might think the only way to be able to get into that lot, frankly, would be going around C&H and then making a right turn in the lot. The sign would be right there to say this is private property. And then modifying condition 4 to give them the option to do the fluted bollards or to provide the landscaping. So that deals with the aesthetics component. I do believe that this is an issue of private property in this case. I do believe that there's sufficient grounds for an exception. Therefore, if we have an exception to the standards, that's why it's not necessary, in respect to my fellow commissioners who were wondering why don't we have more detailed plans. We don't need to have the detailed plans if we find that this is in fact an exception based upon the use and the size and so on and so forth. That's why it doesn't matter. So this may not go much. One more thing on the aesthetics. Right down the street, and nothing against the business, but we have a new gun shop. And in addition to the gun shop and the big gigantic sign, it's full of U-Haul trailers and whatnot. With all due respect, okay, I'm having a hard time with this issue of the aesthetic component. And I just think it's more of a red herring. I think it can be more than adequately mitigated. And I think we can have a balance here. Is it going to be a win-win? I think everyone's going to get a little bit of something. We can take care of the water control and erosion component. We can introduce the appropriate aesthetic component. And we can allow the applicant to use their property in the way they wish to use it. And I really just think that's a pretty fair balance. And that's a pretty appropriate action for this body to take. And I feel very good about moving that forward. And I think it is absolutely honoring the spirit of the plan and the integrity of the general plan. So my motion would be then that we would modify the conditions of approval in items 5.1. Number 4.
Commissioner,
Yeah,
before
I'm
you
sorry.
make your motion,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure you'd like to
I'd
speak.
like to weigh in a little
Yeah,
bit, too.
absolutely.
And then
I was on an
then we'll move to
adrenaline
action.
roll, and I'm done. I withdraw my comments.
We'll come back. I'm sort of struggling with the property rights issue versus the community rights issues represented by this project. So I understand that we're in this like conundrum in terms, as far as I'm concerned, and I recognize that, you know, having been an applicant or an agent for applicants for many years in this community, this stuff is real, you know, in that it costs money, it takes time, there's a lot of stuff to figure out, there's a lot of issues. And kind of with that history in mind, I was looking at our agenda item for tonight and reading the staff package, went back to the site, and I started asking I started with the variance, and I started kind of working backwards. All right, well, what makes this variable? What makes this so special? And I'm going to take exception with probably some of the folks in the room and some of my fellow commissioners. I'm really struggling to see what makes it so special. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just like, wait, this is just another site. An application comes in, there's an existing framework for design. The public has entrusted the city council and the planning commission and their staff to kind of figure out this stuff, and it's been a long process. And anyway, I just couldn't find, what really are the special circumstances. And rather than, us all kind of squabbling for 2 hours about that, I just think we could. There's a lot of, there's exceptions all over the place to a lot of the rules, but there's always a background. There's sort of a backstory for everything. And in this, I was looking, well, what's really the backstory here? Well, it's just been used for a long time. And an application comes in to improve it, to protect the rights and the use. But I don't see it being that special. There's lots of other small parcels. There's lots of other parcels where people have spent fortunes digging out the North American tectonic plate only to have to pave it because it comports and complies with the existing ordinance and the requirements. And so I couldn't find what's so special. And then I started asking myself, well, if I was the architect in this project and this owner was my client, what would I be advising him? And what I would be advising him is, hey, the community is looking for paving and lighting and drainage control and landscaping and proper signage. And if I was the architect or the agent in this project, I'd be telling the client, you got to give them something. That's the way it works. You can't just do an application where you say it's really special. And I know I'm paraphrasing, and I don't mean to be harsh with it, but the community doesn't get anything. Only the applicant gets something, because we do live together, and that's what these regs are for. And because I don't see us getting the parking, the lighting, the drainage, the signage, because this is all just kind of promises, and we're trying to in my view, consider this sort of as like picking from a Chinese food menu. And that, because I disagree with people that think that this application is complete. If this was all that we had to make our decisions on, then this is what we would have to do. But we don't. There is a process, and I think it would be fairly simple to do a real application in terms of give us what the sign looks like. Give us what the curb's going to look like. What landscaping are you prepared to put in? Not just kind of a vague description of it. And have the application be complete. So I'm kind of the of the notion that even though it sounds like kicking the can down the road and starting over, is that, well, I think we can probably agree this application could be better in terms of what we have to look at. So I'm not really prepared to take action on approving this tonight myself.
So Mr. Chairman, if I can just kind of follow up so I understand a little bit, and I guess where I would specifically disagree with you in terms of what makes this lot special is the fact that, and as I said, this is the only lot that I can find in any of our discussions, any of our examples, that is not for public use. So that being said, are you suggesting then that, this is what I'm trying to understand. Are you suggesting then that, okay, if we require them to do a landscaping approach, okay, which gets to the aesthetics. So what is the community getting? Okay, the community is going to get the aesthetics, and they're not going to see the vehicles, which is one of the big issues where people don't see it. It's not going to be blocked, but landscaping is theoretically a nice shield, which is better than the bollards and the zinc chain that I had proposed, right? So now you meet the aesthetics and the community gets something, I think, which is one of your issues. Are you saying that, okay, so I want a detailed and specific design for that landscape, okay? And then since where we had removed the sign before, but the applicants made an argument as to what, regardless of what we do, whether we require paving or not, they still need to have that sign, okay?
Just to respond to that a little bit, when we do have a sign ordinance, I'm pretty certain a sign that
I'm not sure this sign
purports
ordinance.
with that
I don't
would
think
work.
this, I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe this sign is subject to the sign ordinance because it's not advertising the business. This is a regulatory sign. But,
Well, there's best practices and rules for those.
I'm sorry,
You're not
sorry,
recognized.
you're not.
You're not recognized.
You're out of order, sir.
You don't
Sorry.
get to shout out. No, you don't get to shout out.
No. Okay. Okay, so, you were gonna say something, Andrew?
That was a cogent argument.
Let's recess for a couple minutes.
Is that a friend of yours?
This piece of property,
Yeah,
Everybody get a drink.
this is a doctor's parking lot,
correct.
and it says for patients only. Is that considered a public?
Yes, that's for, because they're customers, right? This lot is not for anybody except for the CNH.
No, I
You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to help me remember here, because my recollection is, it's been a long time.
I don't know that we can talk, I don't think we can talk, I'm sorry, I don't think we can
Okay, we'll go ahead and reconvene the meeting now that the excitement is hopefully over. At least that kind of excitement. We would just ask everybody, please keep your hands where we can see them. My blood pressure started to go up. Okay, we were in the middle of this item, and I think, Mr. Friend, you had the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, just going off of your comments, that the two major issues then is first of all, does this warrant an exception, a variance, that would negate the requirement, the two principal requirements I think that we're talking about is the requirement for the paving to parking lot standards and the associated lighting that goes with parking lot standards. And I would submit that lighting standards are appropriate for a public parking lot. They're appropriate to take care of old folks like us so that we can see what we're doing. It's a safety issue. And again, that's why I argue that how this lot is used, by who it's used for, it's not open to the public, it's restricted. That's not necessary. So that's really one of the main bases for why I think the variance is warranted. Okay, so if the variance is warranted and we are therefore not going to require the paving component and the lighting component, then we still need to wrestle with the other two issues, which is presuming we're going to go a landscaping route, okay, for the aesthetics. It'll block the lot from public view. It'll also provide for the erosion control. That was a big thing. That was one of the main things the city came to us with when this application first came to us, is the water running over the sidewalk and into Hangtown Creek and increasing turbidity and subjecting the city to the potential for fines. And then we have that component, and then we have the issue with the sign. And Andrew's going to answer the question that I think was on the table regarding the sign ordinance, and I think he has information for us on that.
I do, thank you. The sign code, the sign regulations 10.4.17 of the city's zoning ordinance does permit what's called quote-unquote small incidental signs displayed strictly for direction, safety, or convenience of the public, including signs that identify restrooms, public telephones, parking area entrances and exits, freight entrances, provided that said signs do not exceed more than 4 in number on any parcel, or 2 per street frontage, whichever is greater. Now, absent is language on the dimensions of the sign, and so that would be the discretion of the commission as to what is small.
Right.
I can confirm that the sign that is on the premises now, the city has no permit for such sign.
And I would be of the position that sign has to go. That sign is too large. And so two things, a 2x2 sign facing west, facing the back side of C&H, that would tell anyone that would be thinking about going into this little sliver of land that this is private property, there's no public parking here. That would be the modification to condition 5. And then condition 4 would be a landscaping. And so it just seems to me that the first thing this body needs to decide is, are we going to say, yes, there is sufficient basis to allow the variance from the parking lot standards of the paving, the striping, and the lighting, or not? That really is, I think, that's the first thing. If not, then it's got to go back to staff as you've been suggesting. If on the other hand, the commission feels, and I think you know what my position is, that yep, given the use and the size and the geometrics of this property, it's not a public parking lot. It's a place where you park vehicles, that's true, but it's not for the public, and therefore we can make some exception, but we still have to deal with the issues of the erosion and the aesthetics and the sign. And that's where I am, and so I think that's what the commission should really decide first.
And that's what brings me back to the question I wanted to make sure that my recollection was correct. But overload these many iterations of this hearing, I recall early on that the language in the development standards, development standards, specifically make no distinction between whether a lot is for public or private use. So the fact
true.
that it's a private lot doesn't change any of the requirements or responsibilities for the way that lot is handled. And we'll just take advantage of the time that the fact that I'm speaking now is I'm absent what I've seen in every other application, which are plan elevations, some sort of rendering of what it will look like finished, what the planters are going to look like, what the plantings are going to look like. I mean, those are those are things that we just come to expect as a routine part. I'm very much in favor of seeing this process and this application being done right from the get-go. So, there's too many loose pieces in my mind.
So,
Pardon me for my lack of.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, then to follow up, because so then it seems that there's a couple of different paths, and we want to provide the applicant sufficient direction. I would not be in any opposition that the applicant go back and submit a detailed plan if they know what it is that we're going to require. So and I think really the nut of it is, are we going to require the parking lot standards? Now, I agree with your statement that the development guidelines don't make a distinction, okay? But I don't think it really contemplates that, and so I think it almost presumes as the default that parking lots are public, and so we don't know that for sure. But I think that is a sufficient basis for the exception. So again, I'm back to, we have to make that determination. Then beyond that, in terms of the planting, the landscaping, the erosion control, and the specific sign, I have no problem at all with, in fact, not even allowing staff the discretion to do that, which we could. But given the level of interest in this from the community, it would probably be appropriate for it to be resubmitted and come back. But I think we should be clear as to what we're going to ask them to do. And I would simply say that I really think that I believe we required a level of, I thought there was a level of gravel. I have to refer to staff, but there had to be at least 2 inch of gravel or some other surface to capture the water. So that would have to be in there specifically, addressed in the plan. I'm not catching the language here off the top of my head. Okay, but that actually was in the concept of my original motion. I don't know if Pierre and Andrew recall, but there had to be some layer of gravel, I think a 2 inch layer of gravel over that surface to help catch the water, in addition to, we envisioned at least a retaining wall of some sort to retain water and prevent the erosion. But now if we go to the plant or landscaping aspect, then that takes care of that. So specific detail with that, yes, I could completely support that. I would be in opposition to requiring the full application of standards for parking lots as we have in the guidelines, because I just don't think they're necessary in this case, and I think there's a basis to waive that requirement. I guess that's it.
May I ask you can just nod your head on this, Mr. Wilbur. If I pull into a C&H auto and the parking lot in front was full, could I pull around and park in that to do my business? Yes, so. Okay. But not legally, no. Okay, thank you.
We're not reopening the public hearing. He had a specific question, Ms. Taylor. Well, no, the applicant just spoke. The public hearing's not open. The public hearing's not open, Sue. It's the public hearing is not open, Sue. Okay, yeah, I'm kind of the opinion, maybe I'm diverging here. I'm not too hung up on the public versus private. It says commercially zoned parcel, as the applicants described it tonight. It's being used for commercial purposes. And I'm just thinking that, in my past experience, if somebody wanted to do any commercial project, first thing you do is start looking at the standards that apply. And, I think this group would probably, I'm just speculating, of course, but would not look favorably at an application for a new project that had a gravel parking component. It just doesn't seem to fit with the commercial use. This isn't personal, private, whatever. So I think we're kind of
Except
splitting hairs there.
that the lot was not created as part of the business. The lot resulted as.
But what we heard tonight is it's being used attendant to that business. His delivery vehicles.
That's true.
Parts,
That's
all that kind of
that's
stuff.
absolutely true. But so you can state that as a fact, and no one could argue with that. But why does that then compel? They weren't, when the house was there, they weren't using it that way. So now the house is gone, they have the opportunity to use it, and so I'm wondering why we would then apply, which they're not onerous in that they're inappropriate. Okay, I mean the standards for parking lots and all are absolutely appropriate. And although frankly I'd rather see the type of paving. Paving is the wrong word. That allows the drainage. It's not the impervious. It's pervious, right? It's pervious. It was hung up on pervious. Pervious as opposed to the impervious asphalt, frankly. So another basis for the variance is the evolution is the history of the evolution. It wasn't created as part. It resulted, okay. And so then what do we do with it? So I mean I think it's it's going to come down to what level are we going to ask them to comply, and is there a basis to give to grant any sort of variance, which is what this is all about.
Are you prepared to make a motion?
I'm not prepared to get 3 nays. I mean, my motion would be, without this being specific, my motion would be, boy, how do I do? Because do I have to deny this? Because I can accept.
But as I understand it, we haven't accepted anything yet, so it can be whatever you want. In terms of there aren't any constraints.
Yeah. I mean, the findings as drawn up by staff, I think, were good for the base. So, well, I'm back to. See, I still support the finding of the variance. Okay, and since I support that, then I would direct the applicant. This is somewhat irregular. I would direct the applicant to resubmit a detailed application for the conditional use permit and site plan review that provides detailed description for the covering of the covering of the lot, right? It's not going to be paved. They can pave it if they want, but I believe that's one of the main issues: expense and inability. The treatment, the ground cover treatment for the lot itself. Specific dimensions and descriptions of the planting containers and the landscaping that will go in those containers, and specific dimensions of the lot as finished, and then specific description of size and orientation of the sign, and anything that's required by the engineering department, okay, to serve the purpose of controlling the erosion to the adequacy of the city's concern, and with all the level of detail that would pass that would meet the approval of current and former staff.
So look, can I suggest maybe a compression of that?
Yes.
You know, I think it might be most useful if the applicant were to look at the prior art, if you will. Look at successful applications for variances and the level of detail that is traditional in those requests. The recent, in recent memory, the credit union rebuild. I mean, there's any number of examples out there where I always like to work from an exemplar, and I think it's tremendously helpful if you had, if you gathered up 3, maybe 4 successful applications and plagiarized the living daylights out of them. For everybody.
Maybe they could hire Mr. Calfee as a consultant.
And I would have to recuse myself. I can't do it.
So, but again, we are back to okay, what the level is. So we're back to whether or not we're going to grant the variance, and then you're right, Jora. Totally agree with that in terms of the quality and the integrity of the application. But what are we going to ask them to submit for is the question. And I would support the variance and not requiring the paving and parking lot standards.
Yeah, it occurs to me maybe it would be useful in terms of the process, and I can tell everybody's just on the edge of their chairs with this. Maybe it makes sense to kind of split this, bifurcate it, and consider the yay or nay on the variance, and then that tells us where we are in terms of what happens next. If we support the variance, then okay, what's the rest of the motion, or another motion on how to show that, and then if the variance doesn't move forward, then we're in the same spot. How do we go forward from here?
And I'm thinking the biggest difference is rather than give the applicant an option for the bollards and chain link versus landscaping, I think we're now going to remove the bollards and chain as an option, and now we're going to compel. And that's actually kind of where I'm going now. Now we will compel the landscaping aspect, and I think that's superior anyway in terms of shielding the lot from public view on the street. But Andrew, I think, has a point of order.
Yeah, I do. A point of order. The statement made by the chair related to potential direction request to bifurcate this. It's staff's perspective that the prominent request tonight first must be the CUP. Without the conditional use, there is no need for a variance. So it's staff's professional opinion that any action, if you're going to bifurcate it and with separate actions, then the CUP, in staff's opinion, should be acted on first, and anything else is subservient to that, because the site plan review relates to the aesthetics, the design, the layout of that, as well as the variance to those development standards.
That's condition of approval number 1, right? Project description is conditionally approved. That's what the statement is. CUP 2015-03 and variance 2015-03 and SPR 2015-05 is conditionally approved to allow the construction use of a private parking lot situated at 618 Main. So if we approve that, then everything else flows?
You should act, if you're going to separate the actions, the CUP, the site plan review, and the variance as separate actionable items tonight,
Yes.
then the order in which they should go is CUP first. The variance, I would add, which should probably
I would
be
do those
second.
two together. And then,
Okay, and
Yeah.
then, either concurrently and then the site plan review would be third.
okay. And the site plan review would be the bifurcated component, because now we're going to talk specific about what we're going to require in that site plan.
Or not, based
Or
on
not,
the
or not,
variance.
based on the variance,
If the
yeah.
variance is approved.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I will then move that we approve the conditional use permit 2015, sorry. I guess I should do this formally. Yes, so I'm going to move that we conditionally approve CUP 2015-03 and variance 2015-03 with the findings and conditions number, I can't use any of these actually. With the findings as stated by staff in the report to allow the construction and use of a private parking lot located at 618 Main Street along the south side of Main Street. So, give me a second, then I can talk about it.
For specificity, can I ask the report date in which you're referring to?
Well, I think the
Just
one
for the
we
record.
had for November 17, right? Because you came back with findings with regards to
Well,
that.
what's on the table today is in the packet that came for you on Thursday.
November 17th.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at today's packet, but I believe the findings were just developed by staff for November 17. And so I move to approve just simply the CUP and the variance for the use of the parking lot.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Anybody out there?
Well, I think you know where you're going to go now.
Back up a second. Yeah.
Okay, motion dies for lack of a second, and bring it back to us for further consideration. Just some discussion. I was okay with this until the CUP and the variance got married together, and I'm struggling with that. So that now this it's neither approved nor denied at this point. We just don't have any agreement to go forward.
So let's
no
follow
action.
that. So you
There's
could
no
make,
action on it, yeah.
Yeah.
so you could make a motion to approve the conditional use permit for a parking lot, right? That's because that's what the conditional use permit is for. Okay, they're seeking a permit for construction and use of a private parking lot. And then, so you're going to give them that, but then I would presume that if you're not going to allow a variance, then you're going to require all of the standards, paving, lighting, striping, etc., that would be associated with a parking lot. Because otherwise you'd be doing a variance.
I disagree a little bit in terms of what can happen. These guys could go back, the applicant could go back, have plans prepared by a suitable professional, kind of including the information that we usually get and that we receive with.
To what standard, though?
Well, that's I'm getting.
Yeah. Okay.
With professionally prepared plans, and I've done it myself many times. Sometimes, you don't always offer to give what you're being asked to give, but you give the arguments, you provide the plans of what you are going to provide. Say you're not going to provide lighting, like in a project like this. So your application comes in and it doesn't get rejected immediately because there's no lighting. It just means we come back and argue about it. It's not necessarily
All right.
a variance.
So then we might as well just direct the applicant to resubmit a detailed application that maybe lays out, that would support the granting of a variance, right? Come back to us with exactly what you want to do. Let us look at it and say, you know what? This is good enough, and we can make the findings for a variance on this. We're not going to require to pay. They either come back with the paving and all that. Is that's the direction you would like to go? Okay.
Yeah, that's
kinda like
essentially it. Let's have a complete application rather than still squabbling about what's a complete application. And the owner, just like any owner, is free to try to turn it a little bit into a negotiation, but we're just trying to make this decision tonight with materials we got 2 hours ago, with impassioned pleas from the audience. I just don't feel comfortable granting a variance that will be around for a very long time in the community based on what we have.
And to the extent that what the commission did before was conceptual and staff kind of draft, we're not really bound by this. We have enough information now with this that we can direct them back. And, you know, they may seek to hire someone, a professional, who could design this, you know, the way what you were trying to do, what you want to do, how you want to do it, and then, that would be presented in such a way that would be easier then for the commission and staff to support what it is that exactly you want to do. Just more specificity. I think that's what you're going for. Yep. Yep. I would support that.
Mr. Chairman,
No,
if
the
I
hearing's
may.
not open. Public hearing's not open. It's back to the commission. We'll make it very, very clear. There always is, yes. So I'm prepared to make a motion that we deny this request for the CUP and the variance, and period. And then that's my motion. And the site plan review. So it's the CUP, the site plan review, and the variance, and we deny it, and then I have another motion.
I second that.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
I guess I need to be clear. If this is denied, does that prohibit the applicant from bringing something else back?
Our code stipulates that 1 calendar year would have to run its course before an applicant can come back.
Right. So I think it's
The other option is, of course, to appeal the decision made by this body.
Yeah, which we don't want to go that. We want to give them the opportunity. Basically, what we're looking for is we want a detailed, specific plan for what they want to do. Then we can vote that up or down. And if we simply deny this, then I think other aspects of code are triggered, and that was
Yeah,
my
I get
concern.
it. Yeah, I get it. Staff, sir.
Yeah, staff would recommend then what you would do is you could amend your motion to deny the applications without prejudice, meaning that the applicant then would have the opportunity to come back with a new application within a year's period of time.
It doesn't have to wait a year.
Doesn't have to wait a year.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
so
my
I would-
understanding.
I
And
would
staff
add without
also
prejudice.
recommend that you articulate findings for denial so that we don't have to come back.
Oh, okay. All right,
Yeah.
so I would amend my motion to conclude with the words without prejudice.
And
I accept the motion.
And in the amendment, the findings, I think, the most appropriate findings would be that the application was deemed to be insufficient into the specifics regarding landscaping, paving surfaces, erosion control, and compliance with standards for parking lots. And therefore, we are not in a position to be able to approve it as submitted.
Again, I'd suggest compressing that into,
We just didn't like it.
no. There's, the things we customarily expect on an application without getting into the details of whether the mullions are correct. Just saying, this is, right, thank you.
What I said was I just think we need a professionally prepared application.
So you may want to accept the findings that I just offered as an amendment.
Oh, okay. Can you state them again? I think I do. Now you have to.
Yeah, staff would recommend, rather than stating as a finding for denial that the applicant should have a professional prepare the
That wasn't
plans, I
one
would
that-
state that the application is complete, or
I want to say that the application, I believe my amendment for findings was that the application as submitted was deficient in terms of the specifics for landscaping, paving materials, lighting, and other standards, and erosion control and other standards that would be associated with the parking lot. So we did not have enough information to make,
Okay.
to grant the CUP and the variance. I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, I would so amend my motion. You approve it?
I approve.
Any further
I
discussion?
approve.
Any further discussion on the motion by the commission? Yeah. You'll have your opportunity. This stuff is always, that's because we're out here in public.
I think since we're still in discussion, Mr. Chairman, I think what you might want to convey to the applicant is, after a vote is taken, then you will articulate very clearly to them exactly what we've done and then what their options are.
Okay.
I think that's what they need.
All right. So then I call the question.
Member Lowry,
Aye.
Chair Wolf,
Aye.
Vice Chair List,
Aye.
Member Friend.
Aye.
Okay. So, to make sure I got it right and the rest of us do as well, we've denied the application essentially because the information is complete. And yet, by having it not be, having it done without prejudice doesn't mean there's like a time limit before you can come back. So we're just looking for professionally prepared plans. We don't say who that is or what that is, but plans prepared and in keeping with kind of the standards of the design industry, and then we'll be able to revisit all of this. But we'll be working from solid professional documents. Anybody want to add anything to that?
The specificity of what you want to do, what it's going to look like, what materials you're going to use, everything has got to be detailed. Okay, that just it has to be detailed. Okay, you have to blueprint it like you blueprint an engine. You're going to blueprint your plan, and it's going to come back. We're going to know exactly what it is that you want to do, and that's going to be your best shot.
Chair Wolf, I do have one addition to that, is that, of course, this action taken by the commission tonight is appealable in its entirety to the City Council, and that would need to be submitted. A request for a appeal would have to be filed within 10 calendar days.
So
Thank you.
The applicant could certainly appeal the denial. Could someone else appeal the without prejudice component, or not?
The appeal, the without prejudice component. What would it gain the
It's
appellant?
the without prejudice I thought
Just to
was
be-
I thought was added to I thought was for the time frame.
I think the purpose of, well, an option for the applicant is to appeal the decision. If the applicant truly believes that the council could approve his variance as he submitted to
Then
staff,
they could appeal what
then
we've done.
they could
Sure.
go through that.
All right.
I guess that's my point.
All right, I want to make sure that
It's,
yeah.
it's
Okay.
just included. Yeah. All right. So thank you for everybody for your patience on a difficult item. We'll move on now to item 5.2. That's not how this works. And Mr. Smith, you're not running this meeting, I am. So we'll be happy to talk with you. You'll have plenty of opportunities to talk about it. But we've taken action on the item. We've done our best to describe it. We'll be happy to talk with you about it. But we need to move on. Not now. Not now. I'm moving on to item 5.2, 1600 Broadway, a conditional use permit and a site plan review. This is a request to establish a recycling collection facility kiosk, a conditional use within the highway commercial zone. And I would like to invite a staff report.
Sure, but before staff gives that report, just to assist the members of the public regarding the previous item, the application fee to appeal a decision made by the Planning Commission is $400.
Wow.
Regarding item 5.2 on tonight's agenda, once again, 1600 Broadway, it is a request for conditional use permit and site plan review. The request is made by Adrian Navarro Ramirez. Mr. Ramirez requests to establish a small recycling collection facility kiosk located at 1600 Broadway called the Town Clean Recycle Center. The address contains an existing convenience market, existing cargo container that's used for storage. There's trash receptacles for the on-site use, as well as on-site parking for the market. The site is adjacent to the former Stadium Club, which, as we all know, recently was destroyed by fire during the summer, as well as further west is a former retail tire center. City records from the 1970s indicate that this site in 1978, the then property owner received site plan review and a variance involving the conversion of at the time there was a body shop in this building, the convenience market. And that CUP, site plan review, did involve the conversion of that use to a produce market. It is subsequently changed from a market to what it is now, a convenience market. And from a building code perspective, it's consistent. In 2010, this Planning Commission conditionally approved a CUP for this exact use, a small recycling collection facility, identically located and sized in the precise location as what's proposed tonight. The applicant at that time, this was under conditional use permit 10-04. That CUP never came to fruition. The use was never initiated, and that CUP expired back in 2012 during the month of April. The request by Mr. Ramirez would involve the placement of one new 8.5 feet high by 8 feet wide by 20 feet in length, a fully enclosed cargo container to be used as the kiosk for this utilitarian facility as a small recycling collection facility. The location on the site is as indicated on the site plan, which is in your packet. It's to the eastern portion of the lot. It is not parked or would not be located affecting any parking stall that's currently striped at this location. The hours of operation that Mr. Ramirez intends to operate this facility is 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday. The facility would receive only California Redemption Value recyclables, or CRV, that is cans, bottles, and plastic beverage containers. No hazardous material will be received and will be collected at this site. The applicant intends to paint the kiosk green to match the base color of the existing convenience market. Sorting bins will be provided by the applicant. If you're familiar with these types of facilities, these are typical, where an applicant would come with their recyclables and they're sorted based on their material and color. Those sorting bins would, at the close of operation during a particular day, would be put back into the facility. So they're not meant to be left out. There'll be no, I also want to mention that Mr. Ramirez has operated and continues to operate facilities in the city currently. He has an existing facility further east on Broadway that's mentioned in the staff report. And he also opened a facility at what was formerly the Valero station on Placerville Drive. Mr. Ramirez no longer operates that facility. It's operated by another entity. But that particular facility, like the one on Broadway, did come before this commission a few years back and was conditioned accordingly under a CUP. There are no utility connections proposed for the site. The kiosk attendant would use the restroom within the convenience market, and any non-recyclable trash generated by the kiosk would utilize the convenience store's existing trash bins. Under the the general plan land use and zoning maps, this site is in with what's called the highway commercial zone or district. The HWC land use zone and designations are intended for freeway-oriented uses in well-defined areas of the city. They include retail sales and services, hotels, motels, restaurants. Within the highway commercial zone, this type of use, this collection facility, is considered a conditional use under that zone. There are specific parameters to the size of this facility, and this classifies as a small collection facility under our city code, which triggers a conditional use permit which must be approved by this body. Because the project involves a cargo container or a new structure, that's what triggers the site plan review component before you this evening. And as the commission is aware, the criteria for review and approval of a site plan review is section 1049 of city code. There is a state agency, the Department of Resources, Recycling and Recovery, or CalRecycle. They certify recycling collection facilities within the state. Inside your project application materials, you have a copy of the applicant's certified location for this site. He has already gone through that paperwork through the state and been granted that certification for the 1600 Broadway address. The CalRecycle process and government entity oversight, they designate what's called a convenience zone, and these zones are placed upon commercial entities that generate the sale of these types of products. And CalRecycle has established a convenience zone around the grocery outlet market at 1426 Broadway. That's a little west of the site. The request location is within the 1/2 mile radius of the convenience zone established by the state. So this facility would serve that convenience zone, in staff's opinion, very well. Staff analyzed the request for consistency with the general plan, the zoning ordinance, the airport land use compatibility plan. Staff believes the commission can make findings that support the request as conditioned by staff, in that they would be consistent with the recycling goal and policy within the general plan that I list and provide for you in the staff report tonight. The request is consistent with the airport land use compatibility plan and its policies relative to noise, safety, airspace protection, overflight, as well as special circumstances. The design of the proposed cargo container kiosk, now this is similar in scale and size and appearance of the metal structures in its vicinity, including the cargo container on the site, the rectangular shape of the existing market, as well as the exterior appearance of the tire store west of the site. So it's not out of character in terms of the materials that this kiosk is proposing tonight. Staff has conditioned this request that it not paint the cargo container green as to match the color of the building, but more green, a forest green, and this is consistent with the 2010 application where other members of the commission at the time, one member who is here tonight may remember that discussion. The application was conditioned to paint the cargo container green to match the green canopy of the trees that are behind it along Hangtown Creek, which runs through this particular property. The other condition staff has added is to provide some landscape component. And the applicant, as I mentioned earlier, has operated the same business in scale and intent at 1770 Broadway. And the commission at that time required some potted plants be placed along the front of that particular business. And to be consistent with that intent, staff is requesting that those plants or others of similar type be planted or provided in pots or planter box along the elevation of where this cargo container will be, and that'll be the elevation facing Broadway. Staff analyzed, once again I mentioned that the location of the container itself or kiosk is not going to be placed where it would impact any required parking for the mini mart convenience store. Also, there's some analysis about there really are no standards in the ITE for parking for this particular use. You'll notice in the analysis of the staff report that it talks about the short duration of a visit using this facility as well as using the mini mart. Staff anticipates those visits typically are probably less than 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes total. And so therefore the turnover is quite large at this particular site for the mini mart, and staff does not see any impacts with this proposed use to be added at this location. Staff has provided you with some findings of fact to support your decision tonight. In support of the request, staff recommends that the commission conduct a public hearing, hear public testimony. As far as the public testimony, I want to remind the commission that we did receive an email yesterday, which was not made part of your packet, but was provided to you, as I mentioned earlier, in the agenda. It is from Greg Machado. I won't characterize the entirety of the email, but In general terms, he is not in favor of the request. Pages 10, 11, and 12 of staff's report are recommended conditions of approval. Mr. Ramirez is in the audience this evening, and that concludes my staff report.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions of staff before the public hearing?
I did have one. Maybe I missed it, and I could ask the applicant, but what is the relationship of the applicant to the existing convenience store?
I know of no familiar or name.
Okay, so,
I think he would just be a tenant.
well, because it seems a restroom for the attendant and customers is provided inside the convenience market, and so I'm just wondering, is the convenience market ownership, are they saying like that's okay?
To answer your question, the property owner has authorized Mr. Ramirez to submit this application. He is a signatory to the application.
Okay, okay, all right, well, that clarifies that, thank you.
You were just talking about the need for either raised planters or planter boxes or some sort, yet part of the application says something about no water. How do we take care of these plants?
Well, I do know for a fact that the mini mart does have, I believe, a hose bib, and so that can be serviced.
Okay.
At this point, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and typically we like to hear from the applicant first, if there's somebody here representing the applicant.
I'm Adrian, the applicant. Well, as the staff mentioned before, I have been doing this kind of business.
Get a little closer to the mic.
Okay. I have been doing this kind of business for a few years, five years in the area. I have been through many things, and all the regulations you guys have been adopted to me to do it. I have done follow it, and I don't think it would change much difference on the traffic or different situations based on this kind of business in the area. Mentioned before, he mentioned also that I have another facility at 70 Broadway. I will close this facility soon after if this situation or this case has been approved, or depends on that, and it will be like the same, just kind of like just move the facility to down the street to be nearby the grocery outlet, and well, hopefully everything will be the same. It doesn't change. Another thing, this kind of business is not based on the homeless people, or basically so many people think about this situation about the homeless, but homeless is not who really make this kind of business work. People who save the product, then they try to get their money back from this place, and if there is some situations, then the homeless of course come. They are customers, but they don't really powerful customer. Also, there is like some people can be concerned about the homeless, but there is no being homeless. It doesn't mean they are bad people or good people. They just different situation. But I mean, I'm not here about to talk about that, but just trying to make my living honest, and that's what I'm trying to do. Thank you.
Any questions of the applicant?
Well, maybe not a question. So, Mr. Ramirez, I remember when you brought your other project before us up on Placerville Drive at the Valero station, and that was very well done and run very well. And you may not have received Business of the Year, but I'm not aware of any kind of problem or difficulty with that. Having said that, I do think the location for that facility is substantially different than the location that's being proposed. And I think one of the things that we are going to have to wrestle with is is this a good fit? That whole stretch is a very troublesome stretch for everyone involved. And you're right, just because someone is homeless does not necessarily speak to their character or intentions. There's just the situation that they're in. And I don't know, I think we're going to have to consider this somewhat carefully. So I'll just ask you, because not that I want to get into the business of advising you in your business, but what advantages from a business perspective, what advantages does this particular site offer you?
Well, the state give a better rates if it's nearby grocery outlet. So that's why.
I'm sorry, say that again a little bit more slowly. I'm having a little
The
bit
state, okay, when
the state of California.
the state of California, of course, and recycle, the car recycle. Because as you see, we have been approved of certification
Right.
with them. So basically, with that, we get better price for a product. So and then if we are farted. So that's another point. Then that's why we try to get nearby.
Oh, okay. So your proximity to the grocery outlet yields a better return for you from the state. The state determines that.
Is that
Okay.
correct?
Right. Oh, all right. So that helps. And there's no way to locate this at the grocery outlet or closer to where it's a little bit more. I'm not sure how to describe this. Where it's a little bit less secluded, a little bit less. Not so close to where there are current problem areas. And I guess another way to ask my question to you is, I asked you what the advantages are. Couldn't there be some other suitable sites that you could look at that would result in a similar reimbursement rate for you that you're going to realize from this site? Again, it has to be with the proximity to something like grocery outlet.
Well, it might be, but it's not kind of really easy to find a specific
Sure.
or right place.
Right.
This place, as you say, it will provide us some members of the staff or someone talk about it. He will let us use his utilities like the water to like in case we've been approved to irrigation of the plants in case been approved, and for use the bathroom or all the stuff then we need to do it our customers as well. So it's the same thing. If we try to open it in the grocery outlet area, it would be more difficult to find that kind of service for the customers.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Anybody else wishing to speak on this item?
Hello, good evening. My name is Gina. I'm here with my husband, Mark. We have been residents of the Upper Broadway area for the past 10 years. We are homeowners. We've had to deal with this homeless issue for a long time now. In this area that you speak of, we live literally just past this liquor store location where he wants to put this recycle center. It's bad enough we have the one up around the corner next to Tijuana Taqueria. This area is a problem area because the city is allowing it to become a problem area and to be a problem area. They're imposing this on us, and they have been for quite some time. When we moved to this area 10 years ago, we did not have the drug use, the drug abuse, the drug dealers, the homeless, the mattresses, the garbage, the litter, the loitering. It's ridiculous. Absolutely not. This needs to go somewhere else, more of a commercial area, maybe down back on Placerville Drive, the Rayleigh Shopping Center, not next to our driveway, because it's literally 20 feet from our driveway. What we have to deal with is the homeless rummaging through our garbage and our recycles to go to this gentleman's recycle center so they can go to the liquor store and buy their alcohol, pass out at the bottom of our driveway, leave their shopping carts at the bottom of our driveway. My husband has to come home and literally pick up probably 200 pounds of garbage in a shopping cart just to be able to drive up our driveway. This is no joke. We call the police time and time and time again. I mean, I leave to go to work. I work down on Main Street, so it's about a 1.5 mile commute. I see dozens of shopping carts. Some are full, some are empty. Mattresses at the old tire store next to the Stadium Club, which is next to this liquor store where he wants to put the recycle center. So there's a makeshift homeless camp there. The grocery outlet shopping center is ridiculous. It's disgusting. I have coworkers coming up to me saying, "Oh my God, Gina, I just went shopping at the dollar store. There's people everywhere. There's homeless people everywhere, trash everywhere. Everyone's getting drunk." I mean, absolutely not. I am so opposed to this. It is literally in our front yard. When it was here a few years ago, same thing. It was atrocious. It was the homeless people. It was garbage. It was more foot traffic. They still have graffiti on the side of their building at this liquor store. It's been there for 3 years, and now people are adding to it. They don't care about our community. They just care about making a quick dollar. I don't even shop at that liquor store anymore because when I go in there, I'm inundated by the homeless. No, absolutely not.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to talk on the item?
Good evening. My name is Peter, and I'm in the work in the liquor store. And we got is a lot of homeless coming in there too, but there's like lot of homeless. Which one is like not good? We move there. We refuse there. We put the sign there too. Everything, but when it's like she says she stopped shopping there, but she go in our other store there too, and we're very nice in there too. But we want to recycle because big issues is right now is when you coming in the you go in a Smith Flat to Point View, there's no sidewalk, and I've been in the other meeting too, and I saw when they're making the sidewalk and everything clean. I'm so proud city doing that too. It's a very good job. And yes, right now is a big issue when they go in with the shopping cart or anything. They go in the way back there's no any sidewalk. They go in the middle in the road. And when they go middle in the road, then is traffic, people coming, and that is a big issue right now. And that's why we try to bring near in the store, because there's easy to people go in the road. And when you coming in the downways, there's a downhill, is people coming in more speed. And when the homeless coming or somebody else coming in the by road, and they can't brake and very hardly they can move in there. That's why we try to get in the more. We are give the very good, and you can talk in like one customer say like she says there's a lot of homeless, but city make is very good right now because before there's a camp, and the city help to they clean up there, and see there's like ton of, she says 200 pound in the garbage. When they move there, there's like thousand is they moving the lot of trucks, they move the garbage. And right now is very few homeless there, but it's mostly sit in the dollar store. You can see anywhere is we are property. There's no any allowed to in the homeless. Anybody said we call the police or we move them, and we refuse them. They never shop in the store. That's the issues. That's we want to recycle there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Les Russell, and my wife and I own the facility that they're now in at 1770 Broadway. And I just want to say that Adrian and his family that work there are probably the best tenants we have ever had any place. We have a couple other properties, and these guys, they keep the place neat and clean. I've been there. I'm there quite often because we have another tenant, the auto stereo shop. And, you know, I see how they respond to the people. They help the people. Women come in with, you know, a pickup load of stuff, and they're out there carrying the stuff for the women. They're just good people, really good people. And the one point, I read the letter from the Machados, and what kind of struck me funny is that they live pretty much between the existing facility and the proposed facility. So one isn't very much closer or further away than the other. You know, and that facility that they operate now at 1770, you know, that didn't create the homeless problem. It didn't contribute or could create any drug problems. Those things exist. They're separate issues, and we can't lay that on these folks that have a really nice business. Luckily, I'm not going to lose them as tenants because they're going to keep the room they rent from me as a warehouse to store all the cans and bottles and plastic, and then when they have enough, they transport it to Sacramento. So I was on the commission when they came to my property, and one of the conditions was some landscaping. They did that. They got some half oak wine barrels. They put shrubbery in it. They take care of it. It went from this to this in the time they've been there. I'm sure they'll do the same if that's what you like to have them do. They're good folks, and I think they're an asset for the community. If you have any questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Good to see you, Les.
Great.
Good evening, Michael Drobish. I concur that the current operation and its site is kept very clean. Always seeing them out there. They're keeping it nice and tidy. They're doing a great job. It's a good location. If you consider allowing the proposed site, there's just a couple of conditions I'd like you to consider. There used to be one there, and I was always appalled at how much trash just can get into the creek because there's no berm between that. So if you could condition some kind of a solid berm to keep bottle caps and cigarette butts or whatever from entering the creek. I do like the proposed, it looks like the container is at an angle, because previously it was a little too parallel to the creek and creating kind of a hiding spot in the back. So if you could condition it that it's at an angle, creating a better view for law enforcement or whoever to see around it. If you do allow it, I'd consider a little more screening on the cargo container long side facing Broadway. Some planting containers and maybe some lattice, and get some vines growing up on it to help soften that cargo container look a little more. And I wasn't sure if the cargo containers are banned in the city, or if that was a discussion a while ago. That's a question I'd like to know. But I think painting it deep green, getting some additional vegetation growing up on it could do a good job of softening it. Moving the site closer to town, as it were, could reduce foot traffic along Broadway. The city's working on new sidewalks. It might be a while. But the upper room also is a foot traffic draw. So you just have to guess on the impact of foot traffic. Just something to consider. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion and action.
Mr. Ramirez owns the existing facility at, is it 1700 or 1770? And is it your understanding that he's going to add this facility, so you're going to have two fairly close to each other? Or he's going to close, simply relocate it? Okay. A question for staff. I mean, Mr. Ramirez has demonstrated that, I mean, he can do these things and run them and runs them well. And you know, I want to acknowledge that. At the same time, I'm incredibly sympathetic to the folks that live there. You know, I take my daughter to the Seventh-day Adventist school. We go there every, of course, now she's driving herself, so I don't have to do it. But I mean, every morning. So I know the area well. And I'm very sympathetic to aggravating a situation that I think is certainly less than desirable. Can we condition this so that it's an annual renewable based upon attractive nuisance or complaints, or because the question is, are the concerns that are being raised, we can conjecture that they will occur, but we don't know that they will. But if we grant it, do we have any recourse then to say, you know, this just isn't working out, and so it could be like an annual renewable thing? Is that a condition that we could apply?
That type of condition has traditionally not been something that this body has over time. In my tenure here, could it be done? Yes, but in actuality, if this were to be approved, if an applicant is contributing to, or their use is contributing to a nuisance, then yes, complaints can be filed by members of the public, brought to staff's attention. And if it raises to the point where it's caused by this particular use, then yes, we could bring this back for reconsideration, amendment, or revocation. But it sounds to me like you want to put a sunset or a time frame in which to come back to review. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. However, give me some sense, Andrew, for what the standard or threshold would be for it to come back then. Because if I put a condition, it's annual renewable, then I already know what the threshold is. It's annual renewable. Boom, it just happens. If however it's complaint driven, as you just described, I'm just curious what the threshold would be that would drive it to come back. Because again, I'm trying to achieve the balance with the folks that are concerned in the area. And I'm not saying, Mr. Ramirez, that you would do this, but these things just kind of happen. So that's what I need to know.
I can recall a project that it involved the Sequoia restaurant, and there was concern when that was entitled back in the early 2000s. Gosh, I've worked for the city that long. The point being that members of the public were concerned that the operation of that facility, which had historically been more of a function related, and then it became basically a 7-day-a-week restaurant. There was concern from the immediate neighbors, not dissimilar to the comments here, although these were related to more trash and things. This was related to, at the Sequoia example, was related to sound and noise. There was concern for the neighbors about events that would take place in that, maybe music playing in the ballroom, etc., and waking the neighbor. And the neighbors here were, in some cases, 20 or 30 feet from the building, if you're familiar with the facility. I know one member of the commission is very familiar with the facility, having worked on the design of that review. But my point is that particular application was conditioned by this body to come back to the commission. The dates, I believe it was 6 or 8 months, and it was related to a more of a staff report as to, has the city received complaints regarding the operation of the use. So that was my experience of how we've operated it in the past. I could be mistaken about the 6 months. Maybe it was longer. Yeah. But maybe, I think, Commissioner Friend, you were a member at that time. Maybe your memory is.
So, but I mean, but to summarize or compress, as Commissioner Lowry has said several times this evening, that we could do it. It's not traditional, but we certainly could do it. That's one way. Another mechanism is to go to the complaint driven, and a third mechanism would be for direct staff to come back and report on after 6 months. And so I appreciate those being the options.
Okay. Andrew, thank you for bringing back those dark memories of those planning commission hearings. I was the applicant agent for the project he was talking about, and the noise was quite a concern, as was traffic and parking. And I'm really sympathetic with the neighbors' issues, except, we have a process for dealing with, with lighting we don't like, traffic we don't like, occupancies and uses that aren't following the rules of their use permits, and these guys will have a condition, assuming we take this action tonight in a positive way, they'll have a use permit which, the public has a mechanism to complain about it, document those complaints, and our staff is pretty good, the city staff is pretty good, is when those rise to a certain level, they'll bring it back. So I believe there is a mechanism to complain. I'm struggling a little bit with preconditioning it. Partly because it doesn't rise to the level of having to recuse myself, but I've been a customer of these guys for years, and they run a really class act.
Yeah.
I've really noticed, and I think if there was any group of entrepreneurs to do this project in a difficult area, these are the guys.
I would like to ask the folks that spoke, the gal that spoke, to come back to the podium. Can I do that? I have a couple of questions for you.
Okay, we'll reopen. You want to say something first? Here, just hold for a second, guys.
Yeah, I do. After speaking with Director Rivas, I was reminded that a conditional use permit is an entitlement that's granted to the site. I think what we've done. Oh, we almost lost their.
Let's try it.
Let me rephrase. I think what we did in the example I mentioned earlier regarding Sequoia was consistent with the land use section of our code that says that conditional use permits are granted to the site, and it's indefinite unless the conditions of approval are not met. What we did in Sequoia was more of a performance staff report back to the commission, where staff at that time, I believe it was Director Calfee, who brought forward whether there were any police activity at the site related to the concerns. And staff would be more than willing to do that if city received complaints regarding this issue related to the operation of this use. Do you want to add anything, Director Rivas?
Just to sort of piggyback on what Mr. Painter said, a conditional use permit is an entitlement that's granted to a piece of property and it runs with the land. Mm-hmm. So in other words, we have the mechanisms to reconsider and revocate the permit for non-compliance with the conditions of approval. Staff would bring it back to you due to complaints or what have you about the operation of the use. There is the other option too, is if they're in compliance with all the conditions of approval, but it's determined by the city to be a nuisance, then there's a mechanism to go through that process as well, and the council can declare the use a nuisance and abate it. So those are your two typical processes. And of course, then there's the soft approach that Mr. Painter mentioned, that staff can certainly come back and report on whether we've received complaints and how the operation is going. But it wouldn't be something that we would compel the applicant to do.
All right, thank you. Do you still have some
I do,
questions?
absolutely,
Okay.
I do.
All right, then we'll reopen the public hearing just for the express purpose of listening to these two members of the public.
So, and I've asked you to come back and speak on this because I can absolutely sense your frustration with the area, and to put it bluntly, the free enjoyment and use of your property, I think, is compromised by a lot of what happens in the area that you're living. How far away are you from the existing 1770 site on Broadway?
We're about 20 feet away from this proposed site. That's probably about a quarter mile up around the corner.
So you presently, you're not really experiencing any issues or effects from the existing site.
It's all melded together. I'm so sick of everyone separating, oh, it's a homeless issue versus a recycle
Yeah.
issue versus a grocery outlet issue. It's all melded together.
Okay, I understand. And then, so this site's gonna be like right at your driveway.
Literally, yes.
It'll be right there. And the concern that
And
you
it's
have.
already a problem there now, about the Holloway
Right, and so the
mattresses.
question is, is this gonna exacerbate it? To what degree is it gonna exacerbate
And
it?
as homeowners, we do have rights.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. No, I understand.
We do have an attorney. He's
Okay.
in Germany right now, and he's talked to the city manager. And he knows him.
Okay.
Gone round and round with the city councils.
So, yes, we are frustrated.
Yeah.
And I know that you sense that because it's very hard to come up here and just, oh, everything's fine, everything's fine. No, everything is not
It's
fine.
not fine. No,
I mean, it's
I
been so bad. We call the police and they do little to nothing.
Yeah.
We go to city council meetings, they do little to nothing. We've gone round and round and round for the last few years. And so, yes, this is extremely frustrating for us. This is extremely frustrating for us.
Okay,
And
I'm gonna ask
both
one more
have
direct.
very good jobs. I'm an engineer for the state
Yeah.
of California. My wife, a very good job.
Okay. So
We're not,
I need to ask a question.
we're not gonna take it anymore.
I understand. Okay, so you're also then very close to the market, which you say you don't use anymore for the reasons that you stated.
Right, and this facility will be literally in the parking lot of
I
Creekview
understand that.
Market.
And so, are you saying that the market also kind of contributes to the problem?
Darn
or-
right they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
We've had to call the police because there's been tents set up in the parking lot.
Right.
We
Okay.
have pictures, we have over
Yeah, I'm sure
1,400
you.
pictures and videos.
All right. Okay. I thank you very much. I do appreciate. Thank you.
I have a question too. I have a question too.
Excuse myself for a moment.
Oh, okay. We're the public hearing's still open to listen to you guys. This is sort of reminding me of some problems I've had before or have been involved with, some issues. What was there first, the market or your house? Or were they both there?
Probably our house.
Right, so
Our house was built in 53, 56, somewhere in there.
when?
53 or
Okay, so
56.
it's been there a while.
The market dates back to the 70s, but prior to that, I witnessed today a 1958 document that shows it was car repair back in the 1950s.
Oh boy. Okay.
No, that's not our house. So you got that wrong. That's
Sir, we're speaking to the item that, I'm not talking about your house, I'm talking about the facility, the mini market.
Okay. And so I'm curious, how long have you guys lived there?
10 years.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we'll reclose the public hearing.
Just want to reiterate, this was not an issue 10 years ago. This was not an issue 8 years ago or 5 years ago.
That's when it became an issue.
All right, we hear you. We hear you. All right, Les, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. What the heck? Professional courtesy.
Les Russell again.
That's just because you're here. I'm not the oldest guy in the room.
Yes. I just want to emphasize again that the recycling business that they have up there didn't create the homeless issue. It didn't create the drug issue. That was there before. And if they both were to close up and go away, they would continue to be there. That's a separate issue. The proposed location, I heard the figure 20 feet away. It's maybe 200 feet away, and it's not.
All right,
it's
well,
not real.
We don't need to be shouting.
Okay, that's fine.
You guys had your shot.
Okay. Maybe it's 20 feet from the edge of their property,
Well,
but
no,
it's not
don't
20
disrupt
feet.
the meeting, please.
It's not 20 feet away from the house. Anyway, these are good people. They didn't create the problem, and they're not going to contribute to it going on. It's a separate issue.
Got it. Thank you. We'll now reclose the public hearing, bring it back to the commission.
I'd like to say one more thing.
No, I just
We're
closed
not
the public
creating
hearing.
blight.
No,
We're not creating blight.
we're.
Let's just leave it at that.
Any questions? Do you think anybody want to make a motion?
My only observation on this is that I have noticed in traveling to different cities, when people are on the streets, the homeless seem to have a little different attitude than when they're in an area where there isn't anybody. And if this operation is like I think it is, and I have not used this this recycling center, that someone is out there in front all day long. So you have a set of eyes on the street all day long. So for me, that is a plus to having it in this location. If I had my ruthers, I would much rather have them down closer to the market, down to the supermarket.
You guys don't know what's going on up there. You just don't know.
Please respect us. We're not listening right now.
Never heard in my life. I'm out of here.
Well,
Come on, Gina. Talk to the city manager.
all right, hey, please.
He knows our attorney. Yeah. They're already.
Hey, we know some attorneys too. Hey, man, thank you. Okay. Democracy is sometimes not as much fun as you might think it would be. Okay, bring it back to the commission here.
Well, my motion would be simply to approve. So however much verbiage you want to hang on to that, by all means, do so.
I would absolutely want, I want a higher threshold or something tighter than simple complaint driven. I don't think that their reaction may seem inappropriate in the setting, in the meeting setting, but I clearly understand what's driving it, and so I don't want to do anything that's going to aggravate it. With all due respect to Les, he's right in the statement, but if it's a relocation, to your driveway, that's an issue, and we do not know what impact it's going to have, if any. So what kind of protections can we introduce at this point? And again, I support Mr. Ramirez, done a great job in the other projects. And so I want to acknowledge that, but it can't be the gain of one to the detriment of someone else. That I don't believe in win-lose propositions, okay? So we're going to come up with some kind of language that's going to require this to come back, and maybe the 6 month, like we did with the Sequoia, is a good. It's a short time frame. It'll give us some immediate feedback, and we can ask for an additional 6 months. Right? We're not limited to just the one time. We can ask for the periodic reports. I would assume. How is it going? What's happening? And then we can make some decision there. Now, the question is, how do we craft that in a language that would tie it to potential revocation of the CUP if we found that there were in fact problems? I don't have a immediate precise approach to that, but I mean that's what I'm looking at.
What concerns me, we've spoken in support, or members of this commission have spoken in support of protecting the property rights of another applicant before this commission. I'm concerned about creating the impression that if on the one hand we're very concerned about protecting the property rights on a long-time privileged member of the community, and on the other hand we're prepared to unduly burden a business person in this town for issues that are, in my opinion, out of his control and not his responsibility to solve. The city took a shot at solving a homeless problem, and there's not the appetite to do it in this town. So we have a homeless problem that is, I believe, the citizens of this town's responsibility to, if not solve, mitigate. And I don't, as I say, if we sing from the hymn book of private property rights, then we also have to protect business owners.
Except that Mr. Ramirez doesn't own any property here.
I'm not, but Mr. Ramirez has a right to operate a business as a means of gainful employment. If
The CUP is not a right, though. This is not a right for Wilbur. I mean, Wilbur has to get a CUP for the property that he actually owns.
my point is that property rights are important, but I don't believe that they're more important for the ability to for a person to work and earn a living. Again, I think the optics of it, depending upon how it's interpreted by other people, other members of other groups, it could. As I say, if we're going to protect the rights of one group, we have to protect the rights of all the groups. And that's my concern, is that I sense an imbalance in the adjudication here.
Well, I'd much rather see the city focus their attention on the homeless situation than on a small, stupid little parking lot on Main Street. I think that's misplaced priority.
We're in violent agreement on that.
Okay, great. So the motion, the only kind of motion I could support to approve this, though, would require a specific timeline of report. There's no burden on the applicant. We're simply going to ask for information back from staff, and then that way we'll know how things are going.
Are you proposing something that's been done, say, in the case of Sequoia?
That's
is
what
there
I'm gonna.
precedent for this?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly
Okay.
there's precedent with the Sequoia.
Okay.
And I think we have an obligation to know. I mean, I'd feel good if we haven't created or moved or exacerbated a problem, and I would feel responsible if it turns out, that turned out not to be. It looked great on paper, but boy, it didn't work out. And so yeah, I think I do want to know that.
Okay, so I mean, if we've done it in the case of a full-on business with investors and multiple people on staff, at least in a business that had the resources to hire a professional agent, then I guess it's not unduly burdening a sole proprietor to make the same requirement.
And again, they don't have to do anything. It's staff's responsibility to collect the information. Am I understanding that correctly?
If I may, that would be a burden on staff. You would be requesting staff to, place it on our calendars to come back at some certain time in the future. It wouldn't be a requirement of the applicant.
So the way what I'm looking at, yes, I acknowledge that.
And it would not be a condition of approval on this CUP. You're asking staff to bring it back.
Okay, fair. Okay, fine. Yes, but if when you return to us, you say we got a problem, then we could take action against the CUP. Correct?
That's correct. Staff would report on compliance with the conditions of approval. Are they compliant or are they not compliant?
Okay, so the conditions of approval have to somehow incorporate attractive nuisance then, because if we don't put that in there, the applicant, they're not doing it. They're operating their business the way the business was designed to operate, was planned to operate, and they aren't creating the problem, right? But it's an attractive nuisance issue, and action is taken based on attractive nuisance. Plenty of precedents for that. Going back to the burden on staff, yes, for the first time, and then we may ask for it a second time. But if the track record is showing that this isn't an issue, well, then we don't have to keep doing it. But I think at least the city is showing some level of concern and responsibility. Yes, we will monitor this. We're not simply going to grant the approval and send them on their way and then we're done with it. And I think that's a reasonable accommodation to do. So I would be in the position, just like we did with the Sequoia. I don't think the size of the business matters. It's a burden on staff, not a burden on the applicant. And I would be, that's what I'd like to see happen.
So I have a question for staff. looking again for precedent, what is the precedent for inserting a phrase like attractive nuisance into the terms of a conditional use permit? I mean, is this a metric we apply to most applicants, or only to one so far?
Staff would probably be, and when we monitor, staff is not going to be doing drive-bys or any proactive monitoring of the site. It would be based on the filing of complaints, either complaints to the Development Services Department of somebody saying they're not complying with their conditions. Could also be we would work with our police department. Are there complaints being filed with the police department for different kinds of activities going on the site?
Okay. My question was, how often is the term attractive nuisance used in cases like this? Is this, or are we breaking new ground for whatever reason here?
That's more of a legal term, and I'd have to defer to, well, counsel that we don't have, but
Right.
typically speaking, an attractive nuisance would be something where, say, a property is unattended, and then people could go in, say, an abandoned building, or there could be a mine shaft, and people could get hurt. There could be some public safety issues. That's typically what's meant by an attractive nuisance.
Right.
So this, I guess the concern here is this is going to attract homeless people that are going to loiter on the property. It's more, I mean, it's not just a burden on the recycling center, it's also a burden on the owner of the convenience store then to police their own property.
You've heard tonight that they intend to do that.
I'd like to recognize myself. Everybody else. You want to go first?
Okay, I'm just asking questions in the interest of fairness. That's
No, I understand, and this is more of a social issue. It's more of a law enforcement issue than it is of, say, just a basic planning issue.
Thanks.
Maybe staff can help me here. I might find myself in disagreement with my esteemed colleagues here, but I'm sort of I have the opinion that the tripwires are already there in terms of if these folks don't properly follow through with the conditions of approval of their use permit, just like any other project, whether it's lighting or noise or trash or parking or site circulation or irrigation of their plants, installation of their plants, installation of anything that was made a condition of approval. And it's, unfortunately, it's basically complaint driven. And so, because we don't have like guys driving around looking out the windows every day. So I hear you looking for a higher level of attention.
Right,
Is
because,
that right?
because, Mr. Chairman, if you read the conditions of approval, there is no condition applied to the CUP that deals with this issue.
Then what is the
So,
issue?
so they would be.
I would ask you, what's the issue? What's the issue?
The issue is, the issue is now as a result of the relocation of this business to this site, that we have an increase in loitering and trash and drug use, any manner of behavior that is illegal and or inconsistent with the value that we have for the community. Camping in the parking lot, so now there's a lot more tents. Just police and so we have data right now from the police department. We could go down to the police department right now. We could look at where this market is, and we could get all of the data.
I see. So you're looking for increased oversight is really what you're looking for.
Yes, and it really isn't the applicant. It's not his condition of approval. That's the challenge. So this would be something we would need staff to provide information back to us and say, okay, for the 6-month period immediately preceding the relocation of the facility, here's your crime and other whatever your social metrics are. I don't care. Here's the data. Then for the first 6 months following this, it looked like this, right? So then we can make a comparative analysis, and if there's any complaints, we'd have that information. If there's no complaints, that's also data in of itself, the absence, and so then we would have a sense as to whether this was a good idea or not. And that's kind of the conditions. The same thing that happened with the Sequoia.
Okay. I think staff was waving their
Yeah,
hands.
I would offer that a finding made or presented for you tonight, as it's on page 10 of the staff report, intimates the requirement and the finding that this property be kept up, free from trash, maintained. So there is some language in here relative to a potential action tonight that responds to the concerns by a member or maybe several members on the dais tonight.
Andrew, if I could, thank you for pointing out findings, because let's go to finding D. The proposed use as, I'm on page 10. Item D, the proposed use as condition is in harmony with the various elements or objectives of the general plan. So if all of a sudden this becomes a problem, then I would say that that finding is no longer met, and that finding is, the conditional use permit is conditioned upon that finding. That would be the nexus that I would use.
Also, proposed condition 7B addresses the keeping of the site in a tidy, clean manner.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I can just piggyback on that, the two adjoining property owners mentioned trash and garbage. Well, they're required to keep the property free of garbage and debris at all times. They also mentioned graffiti on the building. The city code requires that a property owner immediately abate graffiti on their property, on their buildings. So they mentioned that the graffiti had been there for a number of years, and it continues to expand. And so staff will take that as a complaint here. I don't know if there's never been a complaint on that building, why the graffiti remains, but I know the city is pretty aggressive in dealing with that, because graffiti itself could be something, it's that broken window theory that we all hear about, that it just, when a property degrades, it brings in then probably people that are in some degraded state or something of that nature. So we will definitely follow up on that. I think we have conditions of approval in place to keep the property is to be kept in a clean manner. As far as the public themselves, people, because we don't know if they're homeless or not.
Right.
Those are constitutional rights then that are not going to be solved through this conditional use permit.
Right.
If they're loitering or people that shouldn't be there, then that's why we have a police department, and the police department follow constitutional rights in determining whether or not somebody has a right to be on a private piece of property.
On a real serious note, couldn't we just condition Les to have to go clean it up?
After 3 years, graffiti becomes community art.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking now is the condition that we would do is that staff would as part of this we'd require staff to report back to this commission to affirm that the findings, and I'm going to say finding D and finding F in the staff report, and where is that? Oh, 7B. 7B are in fact are not compromised, or are being adhered to and not compromised, and that way, if those are being met, then our fears didn't materialize. I think that's kind of where I would recommend that we go.
So this assumes that you have staff time identified to conduct these measurements and capture these metrics?
As we mentioned before, again, this isn't something that would be part of their conditional use permit. It's something you're going to ask staff to do, and staff will, we're very, very busy.
Right.
So,
understand.
But we're happy to come back and report. And the report will be based on complaints received when they begin their operation to when we make the report. Based on, we can check with our police department. Have they been receiving calls to the site? Have there been citizen complaints submitted to our department? Because we receive complaints on those kinds of things, trash, debris, and the like. But the other more social type of issues that have to do with individuals, well, that's handled through the police department.
Go ahead and ask.
Can we do this in two parts? Do this, and then do what you're asking in a separate motion?
I wouldn't want to, though, because I want to, but however, theoretically, It may not be necessary. I want to do it for emphasis because theoretically, if it turns out, if we just approve this and it turned out that over time we find that D, F, and 7B are compromised, they're not. It's not materialized in the way the findings don't exist then a basis I think could be made for revoking the CUP without us even specifically saying anything about it. But I think the emphasis is important. I also think the emphasis is important to demonstrate in some modicum to the community that we are aware and concerned about what's going on up there. I am sensitive to the concern about staff time. We rarely do this. This is not something we routinely do. I think this kind of rises to a little bit different level. I think actually helps the city in their standing in terms of we are trying to do some things that will preserve folks' property and so so anyway that's where I'm at. I think it to be a simple part of the motion. Oh, God. All right. Okay, so then at the pleasure of the chair, then I will move that we approve conditional use permit 2015-06, site plan review 2015-09, for the request to establish and operate a new recycling collection kiosk at 1600 Broadway. So incorporating the staff report as part of the public record, making the findings as specified, Roman numeral 1, A through H, Roman numeral 2 for conditional use, we will conditionally approve as specified in Roman numeral 2, 1 through 10, and direct staff to report back to the commission within 6 months as to the consistency of the findings, specifically finding D and F Roman numeral 1 and conditional use items 7B in the operation of the facility.
I second it.
Any discussion on the motion? All right, we'll call the question.
Mr. Chair, if I may, staff is having issue with the link to findings. The findings you're making tonight are the findings for approval of the permit. We would come back to you with a report on are they in compliance with the conditions of approval.
No, here's where I disagree though with Pierre. Let me just explain my respectful disagreement with the director. Let's take D. The proposed use as conditioned is in harmony with the various elements or objectives of the general plan. Then go to F. The proposed use as conditioned is not detrimental to surrounding property. This is actually the one that really gets to the nut. The proposed use is not, as conditioned, is not detrimental to surrounding property and that the applicant's intent, blah, blah, blah. But if we find that it turns out that it becomes detrimental, then finding F, which is being used to support the issuance of the CUP, is not true. And so that finding is false. And so I think there is a direct nexus with granting of the CUP. We are assessing, we are reasonably assessing that these findings exist, that this is a true statement. But it may turn out not to be. That's the issue.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, staff does not agree with what Commissioner Friend just said, and I'll tell you why, respectfully so.
Yeah.
The findings you're making are it's a moment in time, if you will. You're making the findings tonight based on the evidence received to date, not in the future. So, if we find in the future, 6 months from now, staff reports back that they're not in compliance with their conditions of approval, or there are other issues regarding nuisances, there's then due process. The city would go through and we can We can then initiate a hearing to revoke the permit. Well, what happens if you revoke the permit? You make findings, and those findings will be based then on what we found 6 months between when they initiate the operation and 6 months from now. It's not tied to the findings you make tonight are the findings you make to approve the permit
Okay.
in this record of time.
Okay, and I
Right now.
respectfully accept that.
New conditions in the, or new findings in the future to revoke.
Okay, however,
declare it a
so Pierre,
nuisance.
here's my challenge. So what if in the future we find that finding F no longer exists? We find that instead of the proposed use is not detrimental to surrounding property, that we find that the proposed use has turned out to be detrimental. So we now have a new finding. So now, then I want that new, if it should be determined, that the use as condition, and presuming that the applicant is fulfilling their condition, that notwithstanding, if it's determined that this use is resulting in a detriment, then the CUP may be revoked. The applicant hasn't done anything wrong. They're doing everything they're supposed to do, but we guessed wrong is my point, right? We're assuming that as this is on paper, this is not going to be a problem. Okay, that's a reasonable assumption. I'm good with that. But if we turn out to be wrong, I want a mechanism to bring it back. That's what I'm saying.
Mr. Chairman, there are mechanisms, and and again, and I'll
want
try
the
and say it
articulation
nice
on
and
that.
slow. If we find that the applicant is not compliant with the conditions of approval,
That's not
then
it,
you
though.
initiate a hearing, a revocation hearing, and you take testimony. And if it's determined that they're not satisfying their conditions of approval, you would make findings to revoke the permit. And they can go through an appeal process and everything else. And there's another mechanism. If a use is found to be a nuisance and detrimental to the neighborhood, sort of different than the conditions of approval, where there's a mechanism to do that as well. And I believe it's the council that could declare the use a nuisance and cause it to be abated. And again, these are all legal due process. It's not something that you tie to tonight. It hasn't happened yet. Nothing's happened yet. But there will be the mechanisms to move forward to eliminate the use if it's found to be detrimental to the neighborhood.
All right, well, I still want to report back. I still want to report back in 6 months. That gives me some level of confidence that condition D and condition F are not being compromised, okay? And I agree with the director. See, the applicant doing what they're supposed to do, in my point, is not the issue, okay? The issue is, has an attractive nuisance resulted from this activity that we're going to approve? That's the question. Okay, and there is a mechanism for attractive nuisances being abated. Okay, and so we're going to rely on the faith of those mechanisms, and I'm happy to do that. So I think my
You just want to report in 6 months.
so Andrew, do you have my language on the motion? Because Pierre was concerned about the nexus tying it back. I still want the report back. I won't make any statement beyond that. I'm simply going to make the statement.
Mr. Chairman, all staff wants to say is that you can certainly request staff to come back, and that would be the majority of the council, not or the commission, not an individual.
Yeah.
And we can certainly come back
Okay.
and report on everything I stated for earlier a couple times. But I think it's not part of this use permit. It's not a burden on the applicant. So you separate that out. We'll put it in the minutes, and we'll try and keep track of it. Put it on our calendars. Computers make it very easy to do now.
To summarize, if I may, Chair Wolf, to summarize
I better get what I want.
To summarize what Director Rivas is, if I can put it in simpler terms, because he helped me out earlier, I thought I'd maybe chime in here. Just for clarity, I think the important thing is the motion and the findings should be related to the use request tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Any action that you request of staff should be, I think, part of a separate comment, which we would put in the minutes, but not made part of the motion. I think that's what we were trying to clarify earlier. Do you disagree?
Do we have to vote on that request?
I think from consensus from.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Now, if that's not the opinion of the consensus of this body, then
Yeah.
let us.
So we have a motion and a second, correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I would
Unless
accept.
you want to start over.
No, I'd accept a friendly amendment to my motion that would negate or withdraw the requirement I added, because I can't remember what it was, but whatever it was.
It was to report back in 6 months.
Okay.
You can still make that comment after that action.
Okay. So I'll withdraw. If I can withdraw that, I can amend my own. I'll withdraw that requirement. Okay. I've made my point. I think it's part of the public record.
Second concurs.
All right, I'll call the question.
Member Lowry.
Aye.
Chair Wolf.
Aye.
Vice Chair List.
Aye.
Member Friend.
Aye.
Motion carries, and I think we have
That was a hanging Chad.
yes, we have consensus from the commission that we would like a report back in 6 months, if not sooner, if there's problems.
So say the group. Okay.
Thank you very much for that consideration. I appreciate it.
I
To
think
the
we need-
applicant, we want you to understand, it's not,
Right.
not your doing that we're concerned with.
Yeah, you guys run a class act. They're just going to watch a little more. So thank you.
Thanks for coming. Take care.
Mr. Chair, if I may, if staff like to request a 5-minute break. Oh, thank you.
Okay, here we go again. We'll reconvene our Planning Commission meeting. We're ready to move on to item 5.3, a zone change, 2015-08, for us to consider and make recommendation to the City Council regarding the City Council initiated intent to amend the Placerville zoning ordinance to prohibit within all zone classifications of the City of Placerville medical marijuana dispensaries, medical marijuana cultivation, and the delivery of medical marijuana. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'll start with a little background. At the May 26, 2015 council meeting, the council was provided an in-depth background discussion of the history of medical marijuana dispensaries in the city, and a copy of that staff report was made part of your package. It's attachment 1. After that report was received by the council, 3 California bills had passed, and that was Assembly Bill 266, Assembly Bill 243, and Senate Bill 643 that regulated medical marijuana and was signed by the governor. Those 3 bills comprise what's known as the Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act, the MMRSA. However, there are 2 areas of MMRSA that require immediate attention. The first area involves deliveries and mobile dispensaries. Under Assembly Bill 266, jurisdictions that wish to ban deliveries or mobile dispensaries need to have an ordinance in place that prohibits this activity. Similarly, Assembly Bill 243 contains a provision that cities that do not have an ordinance regulating or prohibiting cultivation by March 1st of 2016 will lose the authority to regulate or ban cultivation within their city limits, and the state will become the sole licensing authority for this activity. So current city ordinances that are contained in Title V of Chapter 25 currently ban medical marijuana dispensaries, but are silent with respect to deliveries of medical marijuana or mobile dispensaries, as well as the cultivation of medical marijuana. Given the timing requirements to adopt or amend ordinances, the city needs to act promptly if the city desires to retain the ability to either regulate or ban delivery or cultivation of medical marijuana in the future. The League of California Cities recommends that cities in this situation amend their ordinances accordingly prior to the March 1st, 2016 deadline date. As a result, the City Council, at its meeting on November 24th of this year, introduced an ordinance prohibiting medical marijuana dispensaries and the cultivation and the delivery of medical marijuana in the city. The Council also, by minute order, directed staff to initiate a similar amendment to the city's land use ordinance, the zoning code, prohibiting medical marijuana dispensaries at the cultivation and delivery of medical marijuana in all land uses in the city, hence the reason why staff is before you tonight. The council directed the initiation of corresponding amendment to the city's land use ordinance because the recent legislation is unclear as to whether the prohibition or regulation of medical marijuana dispensaries and its cultivation and delivery needs to do a business regulation ordinance or a land use ordinance or both. So the city is opting at this time to do both. The California Supreme Court confirmed the city's ability to prohibit medical marijuana dispensaries in the case of City of Riverside versus Inland Empire Patients Health and Wellness Center. That was decided in 2013. And then appellate courts have held that cities have the authority to prohibit cultivation of all medical marijuana. That was decided in Morale versus City of Live Oak in 2013. And the recent legislation referred to in the staff report does not affect or change these rulings. It also should be emphasized that by adopting these ordinances, the city is keeping its options open should it ever decide to allow in the future or regulate medical marijuana dispensaries and or medical marijuana cultivation or the delivery of such. By having these ordinances in place, the city will not be bound to state regulations, but can develop the city's own set of regulations that better suits its needs. Staff's draft language is attached, attachment 3. This would be Chapter 10 in our zoning code. It would be called the Medical Marijuana Regulations for Title 10 of the Placerville City Code. And I'll go over those really quickly. It is attachment 3 that's contained. It's a draft form. It's actually quite simple. It goes through a set of definitions of terms used in the code, and the main sections of the code are section 10-10-2, which addresses cultivation of medical marijuana, and it's prohibited. And then section 10-10-3, medical or marijuana deliveries and dispensaries, prohibited. And then 10-10-4, establishment or maintenance of medical marijuana dispensaries, cultivation and delivery of medical marijuana declared a public nuisance. So those are the 3 key pieces of this ordinance. The rest of it has to do with the penalties for violation. So with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council to adopt an ordinance adding Chapter 10, Sections 1 through 6, to Title 10 of the Placerville City Code, prohibiting medical marijuana dispensaries, medical marijuana cultivation, and the delivery of medical marijuana in all land use zones in the city of Placerville. And that concludes staff's report.
Questions of staff?
I just want to understand the next, and I wasn't anticipating this coming to, I told Andrew earlier, I was surprised to see this on the agenda, but understand why it is, given action by the council. Is the issue, because it talks a lot about the illegal, grows and illegal grows and the dangers and pitfalls and so on and so forth. Is the issue, is the nexus there that if we allow dispensaries, that then folks will have illegal grows to sell to the dispensary, and that's why the illegal grows are promulgated? Is that the nexus? Because it seems there seems to be 2 different issues. One is the growing aspect, and the other one is the mobile dispensaries and transportation, et cetera. And I was trying to understand the relationship between the 2.
Well, currently, I think it's the desire of the city council to prohibit all 3 legs of medical marijuana. So that would prohibit dispensaries. So that would mean the distribution and sale. It would prohibit the cultivation. So that's the production of the product.
Right.
And would also then prohibit deliveries. So that's the product being moved about from the cultivation location to the dispensaries or to the recipient within the city limits. That's the current desire of the council. And again, as I said, we don't know what the future holds. The state, the federal government, the like could change regulations, make it legal. The city wanted to maintain its option to promulgate its own regulations and not be bound to defaulting to the state.
So that's
why we have the March 1st, 2016 deadline. That's why we're before you here tonight. And so the next step on what action you take, the next step, it goes to city council then to consider these, and it's almost a mirror of what's in the other section of the city code. In the business code, it prohibits all 3 legs as well.
Okay, so and because now you just, my real question got to, the one thing that struck me about this was the all. Okay, so it's blanket all. But by doing that, then the city is retaining its right to at some later date, if it chooses to say, there is one area that we're going to allow this activity, but we're going to severely restrict it to one area. The city will have the right to do that. They'll have the authority to do that. It's not like once they do this, they're bound to this. It's like, we're going to start here. This is our starting place. And then as things evolve or whatever happens, then the city may decide that, one little location, like Upper Broadway, perhaps, I don't know. That was ill-timed. they can do that. So that makes a lot more sense to me. I appreciate that.
Okay, let's go ahead and open the public hearing because our public is falling asleep.
Good evening, Michael Drobish. Just a process question. So there's different levels of approval. There's a resolution, there's an ordinance, and then there's general plan. Would this, at the end of the day, when it's all done, include a general plan amendment to land use? Because I believe that jurisdictions are limited to 4 times a year to change general plan land use. And I'm just wondering if that might possibly impact the city being able to change the general plan land use on other issues. So if staff or somebody could clarify, because I've never understood if that's a calendar year, how that exactly works, but is that a potential impact?
Thank you. Since there are no more members of the public, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission, and I think Mr. Drobish raises a pretty good question. I've never heard of that. So can we staff comment about the 4 times at the well process?
Sure, I would be happy to. Under state planning law, a city or county has the ability to amend its general plan 4 times a year, and that amendment can be very comprehensive. It could have many different components. In other words, you could amend various maps of the general plan. You could amend a number of different elements of the general plan, but it can only be done at 4 times a year. To answer the second question, does the passage of this ordinance, does it require some companion amendment to the general plan? And the answer is no.
Thank you. Any other questions? Discussion?
Move to adopt. Move to recommend. Move to recommend the draft language be submitted to council.
Second.
Any other discussion? I'll call the question. Let's take a roll call, please.
Member Lowry.
Aye.
Member Friend.
Aye.
Vice Chair List.
Aye.
Chair Wolf.
Aye.
I will say I was surprised that there weren't a lot of people in the audience to speak to this. I really anticipated it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
We move on to item 6, all the puns notwithstanding. Matters from commissioners and staff.
Well, I know there's a member that wished to speak, but we do anticipate a meeting on January 5. The items, there'll likely be a couple of items. In light of the holidays, I want to try to get information to you as early as I can. To avoid you having to make the trips down to pick up the materials. So it's our hope that early of the Christmas week, which would normally be when that packet would come out, or actually the week after, between New Year's and Christmas, I want to try to earlier in the week if possible to give you a little bit more time, but still allow the public to comment on the items before you. So just be prepared for that. That's all I've got. Other than your packet did include, it was referenced earlier. I'm sorry, I don't have the document in front of me, but perhaps one of the members can make reference to that. I don't have that in front of me.
This is the save the date for the Clay Street realignment project and Clay Street bridge replacement project. January 6th, 6:30 p.m. registration, open house, 7 p.m. formal meeting at the Town Hall, 550 Main Street, which I think is where we are. Whatever our GPS is.
Mr. Chair, I will be absent on the 5th of January.
Fun times. Thank you. I bet we have a consensus to adjourn. Thank you.